for example, an optimized combination of IQ and conscientiousness can predict your job performance at somewhere between 0.5 and 0.6. So now, if you square that, that's 25 to 36% of the variance. And you think, well, that's not very much. It's only a quarter of the variance in job performance. But it's hard to measure job performance. So there's lots of error in it. And there's error in the measurement of conscientiousness. So some of that's just noise. But importantly, even if it's 25% of the variance, so we set a correlation of 0.5, then you could use it to raise the probability that you'd pick up an above average employee from 50-50 to 75-25, because 75 minus 25 is 0.50. So it's a big effect, and then the economic consequences of that are massive, because it turns out, you know, if you're very good at what you do and you're not very good at it, I might say, well, how much more is it to my advantage to employ you rather than you? And one of the questions would be, well, how much difference in performance is there between people? Like, if everyone lines up, like maybe it's a assembly line job, and once you get it, once you're trained, everyone has exactly the same rate of production. Well, then it doesn't matter if you're, you know, if you have a higher IQ and you're more conscientious, because there's no variability in the performance. But in lots of jobs, there's massive variability. It might even be nonlinear, and we'll talk about that when we get to our discussion of the Pareto distribution. So what that means is that some people are not only not productive in their job, they're negatively productive in a big way. You hire them, and they take money out of the company. So this often happens, for example, if you hire incompetent managers, because not only are they not doing their job, they're stopping 20 other people from doing their job while they're, you know, eating resources like mad doing that. So it can be a real catastrophe. So a bad hire, if someone's making $100,000 a year, a bad hire costs the company about $350,000. So you don't need many of those before, especially if you're a small company, before you're just done. So, and the distribution between people in terms of performance varies with job, but with some jobs it's tremendous, like in sales. You know, so in sales you really see a Pareto distribution where almost everyone is making no sales, and then there's a few people at the end of the distribution who are doing all of it. So, and you know, there's lots of jobs that are like that. They're not normally, the production isn't normally distributed. So, all right, so anyways, back to the aggression or agreeableness here. So most of the time, what you'll see in psychology is that the statistical assumption that's made in a paper when they're comparing two groups, you know, is one group significantly different than the other. The statistics are predicated on the assumption that the distribution of those scores is normal. And what you'll hear psychologists telling you is this central limit theorem, which is, this theorem says that if a random variable x is the sum of a large number of small and independent random variables, then almost no matter how the small variables are distributed, x will approximately be normally distributed. Well, you think if you take human traits, like let's say intelligence for that matter, God only knows how many random genetic factors that could have been one way or another have to sum up to cause, you know, to produce to influence the intellectual capacity of one person and then to produce that amount of variation. It's a lot of random things, and so what happens is it comes out basically normally distributed. So, but some things aren't randomly distributed, and production seems to be one of them. And success seems to be another, which is why, you know, 1% of the people have 50% of the money, because what happens is, well, if you're smart and you work hard, then you multiply how smart you are, right? But then it starts to accrue to you, you know. So if you have $100,000 in the bank and it's making, say, 5% a year, you make quite a bit of money just because you already have the money. So having the money puts you in the game like it does if you're in the real estate market. And once you start to become successful at something, well, then people expect you to be successful. Then they open up more doors to you. And your network of influence widens, and so you have more opportunities, and then people come to you. And so what happens is that as you start to become successful, the probability that you're going to become increasingly successful increases. And so you can get into an exponential rate of return, which is exactly what you want to have happen if you start a startup, right? You don't want linear growth, you'll just die. You want it to go viral. And most things don't, but the things that do are super successful. And people go viral during their lifetime, especially if they're engaged in some kind of creative, in some sort of creative enterprise. And making money actually turns out to be, from the entrepreneurial perspective anyways, essentially a creative enterprise. It's not that surprising. Now,